Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I want to give you guys a sneak preview into the tool that I use for tracking my progress as a video game reseller and collector. It's all right here on Microsoft Excel, so it's nothing super technical or difficult to use. I think everybody is pretty familiar with Excel, and so you kind of understand what's going on, and maybe you can then further implement it in your own personal tool. So this is the tool right here. I thought of not only would I show you the tool, but I would also use as an example my 2019 data. So this would be fun and interesting. 2019 was actually the first year I started collecting games, and I started like the very first week of January. So essentially 2019 was a full year of collecting. And this was pre-COVID, so that should be interesting too. So this tracking tool is really meant for those that are like me, that are collecting games through reselling them at the same time. So it's essentially the grand scheme of things is that I'm buying a bunch of games, I'm picking out the games I want to keep for my collection, and then I sell the rest, and all that effort gives me a nice cost savings. It's a pretty popular way to collect video games. A lot of people do it. It helps you get a collection at a fraction of the price. Although the trade-off is that it does require a lot of sustained dedication and work. So because it requires a lot of dedication and work, it's important to track it in a program in some shape or another. So that's what I do here on this spreadsheet. So let's get right into it. As you can see, this is, as I said, this is my 2019 data. And in this last column here, this is the metric I use the most to tell myself, or to explain how well I'm doing. And this is called percent savings. And percent savings is essentially a percentage that you're saving on your collection of games, as opposed to paying full market value for them. So for example, if we talk about one transaction, for example, if you acquire a $50 game for $25, that's a percent savings of 50%. If you buy a $20 game for $15, that's a percent savings of 25%. And so I look at this percent savings as a summation of all my sales and all my expenses, as well as the total value of the collection that I acquired, into one big percentage. And that's what we have right here for each month and then for the year. So the formula for percent savings is how much value in collection I got plus the sales minus my expenses, and then divide again by the collection value. And that gives you a percentage. And the higher the percentage, the better. If it's really high, it means you're saving a lot of money, which is great, because then you can just buy more games. And if it's really high, like above 100%, it means that you're getting your games for free, essentially. And if it's low, it could be an indicator of a few things, and it's important to track, because if it's low one month, it's probably worthwhile to investigate. And sometimes it's because maybe you're overpaying on things too much or something, or maybe you just didn't make a lot of sales, or you're just very inefficient with your sales. So it's important to know if you had a bad month, like why that happened. So that's also another reason to track everything. So percent savings is a factor of these three bolded variables. To get total sales, now I personally sell on eBay, like 95% of my sales is eBay. And then occasionally I sell in person and with cash. That's usually on Craigslist, if I sell something on Craigslist. To get eBay, my net sales from eBay, I have a little asterisk here to remind me that this amount here is gross sales minus PayPal fees, which in 2019, PayPal was handling the transaction fees at the time. So you had to subtract the PayPal fees, of course the eBay fees, and the shipping costs. So that's all rolled into this. It was a little more difficult in 2019 to get this number. You had to look at your eBay sales, and you had to look up your PayPal fees and kind of do the math to figure it out. Now it's actually really easy because eBay doesn't use PayPal anymore. They use their own system. So how I get this value now is I download a transaction report from eBay, and you can specify the dates. So for January, it would be January 1st to January 30th or 31st, whatever. And it would give you this nice little transaction data sheet of all the transactions. So this includes orders and shipping, all rolled into one document. And this column in K is your net amount for each transaction. So this includes, and you can see the fees here. You can see it includes the eBay fee, the final value fee, any other fees, all rolled into here. So for a particular month, all you gotta do is just do a sum all of all these values, and that's your sales amount for that month. Now cash, because cash can't be traced as well as credit cards, it's important that any cash transaction, you have to manually track it yourself. So if it's a cash purchase or a cash sale, which for me it's always been like Craigslist or something, I always put the date, a description of what it is I bought or sold, and then the amount I paid or sold for. And then there's some algorithms in Excel that helps total the sums for each month of the year. And so that's your cash sales, and then so your total sales is just the sum of those for my case. Your case might be different in case you use multiple avenues of selling. Total expenses, again, that also is cash purchases, which I just went over. And it's also, for me personally, it's my credit card statement. So I have one credit card that I use dedicated solely for this hobby. So it doesn't have anything personal of mine. So it's actually pretty easy to find out how much I spent for a month. And I actually go off of the credit card billing periods. And I use the month that the statement is generated as the amount for that month. So for example, this $731.14 credit card statement, that was how much the statement was issued in January. So even though technically the billing period is like middle of December up to middle of January, I just call it all January just for simplicity's sake. And in the long run, it works itself out. So the total of those is your total expenses. Now, I have also net spending. That's essentially sales minus expenses. So this tells me how much you're spending net-wise. So if it's negative, it means you're spending money. And if it's positive, it means you're gaining money that month. So I was tracking this. I mean, it's really easy to track. Might as well just track it. But when I first started this hobby, I gave myself like $3,000 to $4,000 in my separate account for this hobby purely. And then I told myself, okay, I'll start with $3,000 to $4,000. I can't remember how much it really was. But every month I'll siphon $400 from my joint account to the hobby account. And so that's why I was tracking net spending here, because my allowance was, and my goal was $400. Now the last variable, collection gain, this is what takes probably the most effort to figure out, because every time you get something that you add to your collection, you got to record it. And so I have a tab here for collection. Basically it's a line item where it's a description. Then I have a drop down for what system, like, GC is GameCube. And then I have yes and no drop downs for whether I have the disc or not, whether I have the manual or not, or whether I have the case or box or not. So yes or no. And this helps me figure out like what games are complete or which games are not that I want to complete and so forth. And then lastly is the value of that item or game. And when I type in the value of a game, I use the value that it was at the time I received the game. So these are all things I picked up in 2019 because they're at the very, very top of my collection summary list. And when I got these games, the values that I put for these were the games that were what they were going for in 2019. And as you can see, when I first started collecting, I started with GameCube. And I'm actually really glad I did, because GameCube prices skyrocketed after COVID. So, but for those that might be familiar with GameCube and how much prices for games are going, you'll probably look at these and be like, wow, those are really, really low. Especially Pokemon XD, $50, that's easily over 100 now. But in 2019, that's kind of what it was going for, $50. And how I get that $50 amount is, and I think I've mentioned this, I'm not sure if I showed it, but you can go on eBay and you can actually filter out and search for sold listings. And this gives you, in my opinion, the best interpretation as to how much a game is worth, because you're actually seeing how much it's actually sold. I mean, any Joe can just list a game for like, I'm gonna list Pokemon XD for $800, and then, but that's obviously not what it's worth. But if you go to the sold listings, you actually see what things are selling for, and that gives you a more accurate idea of what it's worth. So that's what I have here in the value. And then in order to figure out how much collection you gained for a particular month, you gotta track the total collection of the value. So if your total collection in January, at the end of January, was like $5,000 or $1,000, then your collection gain for January was $1,000. Now in February, if your total collection is worth $2,000 now, it means that in February you gained $1,000 worth of games for that month, so that the January and February should equal $2,000. So in order to kind of get accurate collection amounts for each month, you have to make sure you get accurate totals at the end of every month, and then you can do the difference to figure out what the added collection amount was. So that's how the three variables are kind of calculated in the Excel sheet here, and then of course that gives you percent savings. And yeah, 2019 was a roller coaster. Wow. It started off really low. Now, this is actually very, very common, I think, because when you first start off, you're gonna be buying a lot, but you won't have steady sales yet. And because of that, your numbers are probably gonna look bad. Like my first month was negative 27%. Like that's not good, but because it was the first month, it's not super bad. So if you ever are trying this and you're like, wow, the first month or two is really bad, it doesn't mean to quit it. It just means that things just kind of haven't equalized yet. Because I mean, there is a timetable, you know. It's if you buy something on the internet, you gotta wait a couple days for it to ship to you. Then it probably takes a couple days for you to, you know, fix or clean anything, put it up for sale, and then you may wait months for it to finally sell, and then you have to ship it. So it just takes time. So your percent savings in the first couple months might be really low, but that's about it. So if I total my total collection in 2019, I acquired $15,325 worth of games. And if we look at my net spending, my net spending amount was $3,691. So these two variables essentially tell me that I got $15,000 worth of games, but I really only spent $3,691 to get that. And so I saved 75%. So I felt like that was a pretty efficient goal. And I think it was good. I've definitely improved a lot. My 2020 and 2021 are a little better. They're not better in terms of percent savings. I won't go into it, but they're better in other. But yeah, that's essentially it. This is my Excel sheet. Again, it's nothing super fancy. It's actually pretty straightforward. I like it a lot. So if anyone's like super interested in this kind of specific sheet, I could probably make like a template for anyone so that they can just do the plug and chug. They don't have to worry about the algorithms if you're not super comfortable with Excel. But I use Excel a lot for like personal. I use it for work too, and now I use it for my hobbies. So it's just something that I just like natively use and pick up. So So that's my tracking program, and this is how I did in 2019. I think I did pretty good. 2019, I actually focused mainly GameCube and PS1. Maybe I got a little bit into Dreamcast and PS2 towards the end of the year, but I definitely didn't get into the very, very expensive systems like Sega Saturn or complete Super Nintendo, which I've gotten into this year and last year. So that definitely messed up my percent savings a little bit, but what can you do? All right, thanks guys. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next videos, and if you have any questions, just please leave it in the comments. I'll definitely answer it and get back to you as soon as I can. So thanks again, and take care.